All right.
All right.
It is
It
10
is
o'clock.
10 o'clock.
Get started.
Started.
Good morning,
Good morning,
everyone.
everyone.
I'm Taylor Post, Swiftland's office manager, and I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar, Free and Low-Cost Alternatives to Popular Software, and today's presenter, Diana Silvera. Diana Silvera is a librarian and president of Novare Library Services, where she works with libraries to develop, implement, and utilize technology effectively. Previously, she was employed by the Tampa Bay Library Consortium, and she has an MLIS from UNC Greensboro and a BS in psychology from Catawba College. I probably massacred that name again. Her book, Library Technology Planning for Today and Tomorrow, published by Rowman and Littlefield in 2018, is now available. Please welcome Diana Silvera and enjoy her webinar. Diana?
Hi, everybody, and welcome. Good morning. If you could just say hi in the chat box real quick so I know that you can all hear me okay? Wonderful. So one of the things today that I would like you to keep in mind is the more you type in this chat box, the more all of us will get out of it. So I encourage you to put your own thoughts into that box throughout today's session. There's a lot of free and low-cost software alternatives. So if I'm not mentioning one that is your favorite, please speak up. If you have an experience and you're like, that is an awful software, also speak up. I think the more we all share, the more we'll learn. I'm going to keep track of anything that people mention in the chat box that's not in the slides, and I'm going to add them to the shareable slides that I'll share with you at the end. So all of those links will be available to you. At the end of the show, the end of the slideshow, I will give you a PowerPoint, a link to the PowerPoint, and so you don't have to jot down all of the links today. So that said, I'm going to get started, and it's Catawba College. Just going to throw that out there. But I feel like I should have some school pride there. I don't know why, but I do. Anyway, so yes, probably because there's Catawba Valley. I haven't actually tried the wine. I could make a joke about the school right now, but I'm not. It was a cute little school up in North Carolina. 1,000 students when I went there. And anyway, so the agenda today is we're going to just talk about what all terminology before we get started. Then we're going to cover operating systems, productivity, library-specific resources, makerspace stuff, graphics, marketing, and editing software. I kind of tried to bump them together as much as we can. And then at the end, and of course, we'll have questions and discussion throughout today's session. So hopefully you will find resources that help with you. So before we get started, I just wanted to point out a couple terms that we're going to be throwing around so that we're all on the same page. Open source, personal use, and commercial use are three main terms that you're going to hear. Open source means it's developed and the code is out in the public world for anyone. There's no charge for it ever. Opensource.org and GitHub are great places for this. These open source softwares, they're out there. People volunteer their time to keep it up to date. So sometimes you have branches where maybe myself and Bob added different functionality to it and it kind of spreads out. But for the most part, the ones we cover today are kind of the big boys. They have some more control over that. But you can develop the code, you can go in and look at the code. It's all right there and for free. Personal use means it is a company. It's a proprietary software, and they offer it free for personal use. So a lot of software will say you can use it for your personal well-being and your personal use, but you cannot use it for commercial use, which means you're going to make a profit on it. So you see this a lot in software, some of the makerspace stuff. One of the examples you see this with is fonts a lot. Fonts will say you can use this as much as you want as long as it's for personal reasons, but you can't go make a t-shirt with my font and sell it, and that's commercial use. So just kind of keep those in mind. We're going to focus on open source and freemium stuff today for the most part. So freemium means it's a proprietary software. Again, it's owned by somebody, but they offer a light version for free. Functionality will vary. There's good and bad in this. Sometimes freemium software can change. They can start with 100 different functionalities are for free, and then they start to kind of pull them back and put more stuff behind the paywall, which can be really annoying, but so it gives you a glimpse and helps you figure out if you want to use it. And then, of course, totally free means there's no charge. So if it's totally free, though, you're paying for it. Either it's open source completely, or you're paying for it behind the scenes, either through advertising displaying on the pages, or they're selling your data. So just kind of keep that in mind. Sometimes we're okay with that. We're all on Facebook. We all use Google, right? They sell the data behind the scenes, and they also do some advertising. So the pros and cons of free, especially when we talk about library software, especially if you're talking about something you might be offering to the public. First of all, it's free. That doesn't get any better than that, right? We all like free. So free is sometimes the driving decision factor in that. But you need to keep in mind, free is not often free. Sometimes there's no support, or you have to pay for support. So this could be important if you're not a highly technical person and the software is really techy, or it runs into glitches. You might not have an avenue to get it fixed for free. A lot of the open source software, and we'll talk about which ones I think are particularly good, have really big online communities where you post a question to a forum, it's not immediate, and someone's likely to help you. And there's tons of YouTube videos, there's tons of stuff like that out there. So the other part of free is the training. How do you learn how to use it? Some of it's just intuitive. You just go in, you play with it, you're up and going, you're fine. Others, you're going to have to look into YouTube. There's some books, things like that, that you might be able to learn from. And then how is it going to be developed in maintenance? And what is the maintenance? If it's open source, you're depending on the free time of others. So some software, as we go through this, the ones today specifically, I think do a really good job of keeping up the development and maintenance. Other open source, they kind of languish a little, or the development cycle is uneven, where it will sort of sit dormant for a while, somebody will get involved, all of a sudden there's a new version out, so you kind of have to stay up to date with that. So lots of, so there's good and bad. The ones today that we're covering, the ones that I picked out to talk with you about today are my favorites. The ones I think they're well maintained, they have a good interface. I'll tell you what level of training I think involves. They often have really good support networks out there in the public, and I feel like they benefit us as whole. Any questions just sort of on what open source is, or what we're going to be covering today? So operating systems is where we're going to start. This is the basic of what runs your computer or your phone. So for example, Android. How many of you have Android phones? Okay. I see hands being raised. Yes, lots of people. So you're already using open source software. So open source, Android, you can go look right at the software. You can develop based on it for free. You can do all sorts of stuff like that. You see where it's a little uneven. Some phones will get different versions before others. But it's just out there. And that's why it's so widespread, right? That's why so many phones are based on it. Google's based on it. I'm having a total blank on names of phones right now, but most phones are based on this unless you have an Apple. And they look different depending on the developer because they put different skins on it, but the foundation of it is this core open source software. The next thing is Linux, and I know Linux, sometimes people go, oh, I don't know. We have Windows, or you have an Apple operating system on your computer most likely. Linux is an alternative to that. And I'm not saying buy a Windows 10 computer and wipe it off and put Linux on it, but Linux can give you new life on some of your older software. on your older computers. If you have some computers that they just can't take that next Windows update, they're a little older, but you don't want to take them out of circulation, Linux is a really good version, a good alternative to that, and it can bring new life into your older technology. They make for a great kiosk too, Robbie's adding. Exactly. So you see a lot of use for this. You're not going to be able to run some traditional programs on it, but you can run other programs on it. A lot of the stuff we cover today. I know personally, my 3D printer no longer works on my Apple computer or my Windows computer, but our Linux computer can run the software for it as still. So it's giving my 3D printer a second life just using Linux. There's different builds of Linux. It's Ubuntu is kind of like the big guy, but there's a lot of other ones out there that if you want to follow along. And if you're into development, you can actually put in suggestions. You can get involved in the development community, which is sort of a fun thing. I see some questions coming in, so I'm kind of going a little slow here. Any questions about Android or Linux? If you are thinking about entering the app world, Sylvia is saying you might have to jailbreak your device to put Linux on it. Yeah, it depends on your computer. A kiosk is those things that when you walk into the library, maybe they're virtual displays, or they're just a little thing that runs maybe your ILS system, or they have a map, something like that. They're sort of freestanding. If you are starting to think, like, I would love to design an app, designing an app for Android versus Apple is a lot lower barrier, so it's a really great starting place as well. I see some more coming in, so I'm just kind of pausing just for a second. If anyone has any other questions or So the biggest thing that we need as librarians is productivity. Robbie's saying Android X 80, I can't speak, x86 works great on old Surface Pros and will give them a new life. And that you probably do need to jailbreak to get it on there, but that would make a huge difference. I know we run it on an old Mac right now. We run it on old Windows machines. It really does help bring back some of the older technology that you don't quite want to get rid of yet. So the first big open source sort of thing that you probably have worked with before is Firefox. How many of you are Firefox users today? Okay, yep, awesome. So lots of Firefox-ish people. So what is neat about Firefox is it's built by Mozilla. It's open source. Mozilla, the organization Mozilla, is really focused on privacy. So it's a really strong browser, but it, unlike Google, which, Google, like you can't get away from Google. I use Google. I'm not saying anything bad about it. It's selling my information. It's creating user profiles on me. It's helping do all of that kind of stuff. And it's using it internally at Google, and it's also selling it in other places. Where Firefox is really kind of working on the other side of that. You can really lock down your computer. You can kind of get a little more secure than you can in Sophia says she's given her life over to the Google overlords. It does feel like that some days. So Firefox is a really great alternative. I really like their privacy focus. You can really tinker with their settings if you haven't tried it. It works, if you're a Google user, you probably are not going to have any kind of different user experience with it, but you're kind of helping out the world of privacy versus Google in there. KeePass is another one. If you are like me and you work on multiple devices, you have your work computer, in the back office computer, maybe a laptop, maybe your personal phone, your home computer. We have so many devices now. KeePass is a way to keep your passwords safe. The neat thing about this is it is not cloud-based storage, so it kind of helps you really lock down your software. And this is free of charge, and and it's secure. So what you have to do is only know one password. So personally, I have a password manager. I have 600 passwords in there. I don't know what any password is. It's just because you shouldn't be duplicating your passwords. So you have 600 different, I have 600 random number combinations as passwords. So how do you keep that? If you use something like Firefox for your password storage, that's okay, but you always have to be I actually do use LastPass myself, but KeePass is the open source version of it. So if you use the browser for your password protection, you have to always use that browser. That's a great question, Whitney. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't want to pause and look at, oh, Robbie's saying yes, it does. It's installable as well. Yeah, Nadine, they're all just a little bit different. So I would definitely play with different ones to figure out which one you'd use. LastPass is really good. KeePass. If you are like a diehard Google person or a diehard Firefox person, you can use their password managers, but you have to create accounts and keep making sure you log in on those different devices. The one I really don't like is the iCloud one because you have to use Apple stuff to get to it. So like my phone will save it, but then I don't have my password on my computer. It doesn't talk well with the others. Search engine wise, moving away from the Google overlords as Sylvia has coined them, we have DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo is a privacy-based search engine. You can add it to Firefox, you can add it to Google, you can add it to anything, you can download the app for it. It does not base your searches on who you are, which is something Google does. So if I search for information and you search for information, our search results will look different based upon our search history, our location, all of that kind of stuff. So DuckDuckGo kind of takes that away and gives us that neutral search. And I actually do this often. I will do a search in Google and I'm like, that's kind of a weird result. And I will open up DuckDuckGo and do another search and compare the results to see why my search result was so weird. So it's open source. They block hidden trackers, so you're a little more encrypted. They're not passing information back and forth and selling stuff. So really, it's a great alternative to Google, and you can put it right into whatever search place that you search. And I know we just like kind of made fun of Google, but you cannot get away from Google and the stuff that they have for free. There's some stuff you just are not going to find anyplace else. You know, the Google Drive, you can store and share documents. You have the ability to work at the same time on documents collaboratively. And the Forms is really a great form software, and there's not many comparable softwares like that for free. I was actually looking for something yesterday and was not finding anything out there that did everything that I wanted Forms to do. Google Translate, if we work on the reference desk, it is a lifesaver. So somebody's asking, is SurveyMonkey free? SurveyMonkey is free for 10 questions and only limited results. You can only you can't get all the charts and stuff on the back end for free. Ellen's adding, Yahoo doesn't limit storage size, whereas Gmail does. That's a great thing to know because Gmail does. I've actually hit where, because I have a lot of presentations and stuff in mine, but I've hit the storage limit where I'm starting to, I pay for Google now. So that's great. But Google Translator is amazing. It will, if someone speaks into the phone, it will actually, or the device or the computer, it will translate it for you. The other thing it will do is if you hover your phone's camera over text, it will translate for you. So for example, 2 years ago, we were in Japan. And I would walk into restaurants and they have the little picture, but the picture, you can't really tell what and you want to know what you're going to eat, right? So I would just hover my phone over the menu and it would translate each item for me as I went through. I thought that was a really great functionality, and we used it a couple times when we were lost to talk with people that we didn't know. Judy's also recommending Babelfish for translation. So lots of stuff in there. It's hard to avoid this day and age. Google Street View and Google Maps and all of that kind of stuff. There's some other options out there, but really by far it's probably the most robust. The other thing I wanted to mention is a monetary extender. It's called SpaceDesk.net, and it will extend your computer to a second device, so I can set up my laptop next to me and I can have my computer if I don't have the cords and the wires to put this all together. But you can also use it to create video walls and manage video displays within your library. So if you were looking at sort of expanding your digital displays, this is a great open source solution for you. And lastly, for productivity, I wanted to mention ADA resources. As librarians, we're always trying to make sure our resources, this isn't the last one, I have a couple more, but we want to make sure our websites and our documents are ADA compliant, and our posters and everything else within our libraries. So accessible colors will tell you if the contrast in your posters, in your website, in your digital marketing is enough. What that means is, for example, in this picture, you can see the word library is on white. So that's the best contrast that you can have. But the orange is on white. That actually has a really high contrast level. But if I had a yellow background, that orange would not be readable. And this software will help you figure out what is readable and what is not readable. UserWay will analyze your site and resources to help you figure out if they're accessible. And Wave, this is actually a screenshot, will take you through your website and show you what are the ADA issues that you need to look at. None of these are 100%, but they are going to get you way further than nothing at all, and they're all free open source options. The next is QR codes. QR codes, it's funny, they've been around forever. How many of you have used QR codes? I say, Mary, I know you have. Okay, lots. It's funny, with COVID, I have actually seen more QR codes than I have in a while. I went to a restaurant. It was a bold move for me. The other day, and the restaurant on the table had a big QR code, and we scanned with our phones the QR code, and the menus came up on our personal devices, so we didn't have to have menus. And I'm reading a lot about how this is making a comeback. Yeah, Whitney. So I know I haven't gotten out much. I'm still mostly quarantining, so I was very excited to see that. QR codes will point you to a website, a contact, a phone, anything you want it to point to, and the person just needs to scan with their phone or device. Yep, now that the camera works with QR codes, there isn't even an app that people have to download, so it takes away that whole sort of level of complexity that people had before. I know personally I was with my mother. If I had to tell her how to download an app, and we would have still been at the restaurant. So you can put them on your shelves. You can put them in different places over the library. One of the nice things with this one is it will give you actually the statistics and show you how many people have scanned it and how many people have clicked through it. So you can actually see if your code is working. You can create 6 codes for the same URL, and then you know which code was more effective. So I know that maybe I have a QR code on the front door, I have a QR code at the reference desk, I have a QR code in the bookstore, and I can tell you which place people were scanning it. So I'm able to kind of get myself some statistics on my posters. Clarissa's saying they use it on presentations to link to research guides, and I think that's a great idea. Managing project as we all go virtual, but even if we're not virtual, managing projects is always a challenge when there's different people with different shifts in different places. Comanche, if you are an academic library, that is free of charge for you. If you are public, they charge now. But Trello is a free alternative to that. And basically, get my little pointer out here, you create these titles and then you put the different things that have to be done in here, and you can assign them to people. You know, yellow could be Diana's task, Bob could be orange, and then you can put more information. I can put done, all of that kind of stuff so we can follow along. I worked on a committee that used this, and it was probably the most effective committee I've ever been on. It was an ALA committee, so that says a lot. Every meeting we would open this up and we would start going through it, and then we'd mark done and get it off, but we could all look at it all the time and keep ourselves up to date. So it was a really way to keep everybody on task. Online meeting software, of course, right? That's all we do now. So Zoom has a free version, 45-minute maximum. It works. You know, a lot of meetings don't need to be more than 45 minutes. Meet with Google has, of course, launched because they have to compete as well. I find it's not as easy. People need Google accounts. It's a little more awkward to use than Zoom. Zoom seems to have a really low barrier for people that are technology challenged. If you do not want third-party, you know, a corporation, open meetings at apache.org is an open source meeting software. That is going to have a little more technical stuff to deal with. Yes, Skype really didn't dominate during this quarantine. I think that's probably a really bad sign for them. They really did not. What I read is Microsoft has focused so much on Microsoft Teams that they're not really developing Skype the way they should. And the problem with Microsoft Teams is, you know, you can have it kind of, people have to have Microsoft on their computers. A lot of the meetings I go to, I need to have my Microsoft account. So you're kind of limiting people. It's not really a great software for going outside your team. It's a good inside meeting software. Whitney's saying they use WebEx still. Okay. And so, you know, WebEx, Adobe Connect, GoToWebinar, GoToMeeting, they all are great options. They're paid versions. So these can offer you some free, quick and dirty ways to meet. You can also use Facebook, has some group meeting stuff. Yeah, now I haven't really explored that much, but people have to have Facebook accounts to do that. And if we're trying to connect with patrons, they might not want to have their library programming connected to their Facebook account, and we might not want that either. We might not want to know that much about the people attending our programs. So all really great. I'm laughing about Zoom because my sister, when we first, you know, in the midst of quarantine, we were going to do a Zoom meeting and I was just going to use the free software, and my cousin was like, oh, you can't. My sister said, why as a family do we need to get together for more than 45 minutes? That's just going to be awkward. The software cutting off is probably the best thing that will happen to our family. And she meant it in a loving way. So just kind of keep your meeting short, and I think you can always relaunch a meeting and start over if you need to. I know, right? Sorry, I just I don't know why that popped in my head and I felt compelled to tell you. Help desk software is another great thing for us to think about. As libraries, we often do this just off the cuff and very informally. You know, our patron Mary came in and told me something's not working. Bob mentioned something to me. I started a ticket. It becomes very disorganized sometimes, and it's hard, and we drop the ball. We don't get back to people. Issues kind of, or we don't notice that it's a bigger problem because I'm working on a problem at one desk. You know, Bob is working on one over here. Sally's working on one over there. We don't realize all three of us are actually trying to solve the same issue. So Robbie's saying they actually use Spiceworks, which is on here, but all four of these offer you IT software, which means that everybody can work on the tickets, but it's all kept in one place. So you can track things, you can find out what's going on, you can see if people are not being helped. This helps point everybody into the right place for help, and questions aren't lingering out there in odd places. I don't know what happened to my image there. That's really like a weird thing that happened there. So communication, I want to mention Slack. How many of you have used Slack? Okay, a couple people. I love Slack, and I think that in libraries, we really need to step back and look at it. So Slack is a communication tool. Her brother's fraternity uses it, but I think in a library it would be great. So basically, everybody creates a Slack account, and we're all on a team. We can have multiple communication channels within that team. So let's take a public library, for example. We can have a channel for reference questions. We can have one for help. We can have one for funny stuff. We can have one for programming. We can have all these different channels, as many or as few HR, staff resources, things like that. And when I send a question, it goes to everybody in that channel. I don't have to be there to see it, right? I can have the software closed, but I can catch up and find out what's going on. It would be really good as a cross-communication tool so that people can have it on in their different desk, and you can communicate with people in the back all seamlessly and really quickly, so you're not trying to call around looking for somebody. It works on mobile, it works on desktop, so you can have it anywhere and everywhere. My husband, his school used it for students, so that students could help each other with homework. There's a lot of great uses for it, and I think it would be a really good tool for a library to kind of create a better communication system with staff than just kind of email. And those channels can help you sort out, so I don't have to look at everything. I can kind of just look at what's relevant to me. Whereas if we're doing email blasts to everybody all the time, it can kind of get overwhelming in your inbox. Proton Mail is an alternative for email. They help you create disposable emails and things like that that will Yep, Elizabeth, Slack is free for all intents and purposes. I think it's something like 100,000 messages, and then you have to start paying, but it's not like at the 100,000th, it's the 100,000th one that's saved or something like that. It was something that when I looked at it, I was thinking there's no way that we would have to worry about hitting that level. Uber uses it in a couple really big companies. I think that kind of voiced the pay versions so that the rest of us don't really have to pay much. And it integrates with a lot of the other stuff that we're talking about today, so you can launch meetings in it, you can launch you can have Trello balancing in it, you can insert documents and things like that as well. And I keep saying lastly, but yeah, this one's lastly. Screen recording is something we all sometimes need to do. Sometimes this is the best way to help a patron, to help each other, to figure out what's going on, to create a tutorial. Screencastify.com is a free version you can use. You can do a browser tab, your desktop, the webcam, and you can create little short videos on your computer. And then you can share them through here, or you can download them and then put them up any place that you want. So are there any resources? I know Babelfish was mentioned. I'm going to add that to our the slides that you'll receive afterwards. I can't add them today. Are there any other productivity sort of based things you want to... Sylvia's saying on Windows you can record your screen with Control H. Yep, and that depends on your computer. Some of the older Windows computers can't handle that, but the newer ones definitely can. The things like Castify will just give you a little more control than the basic Windows. Judy's mentioning Box and Dropbox are similar to Google Drive. Yep, they both have a limit of how much storage you have, but you can definitely store and share documents within there. Although I will tell you, and I have the pro version of Dropbox, I have a lot of storage issues. I was annoyed with Dropbox the other day because I was trying to share a document on a website, and it was and Dropbox has like the login stuff. They have a big thing on the bottom, sign up for an account, and it was really confusing. I think that you didn't have to do that to download to access the software. I'm marking all of these down on here. So we have Dropbox, Box, Scanner Pro, Sylvia is saying that they use that Windows recording for so Leslie's saying it depends on your county's lockdown level, so they have no screen recording capability. And Whitney's saying she uses Swift for polling and surveying, not for work, but I like it. You can set up text responses as well, and that's fantastic. Okay. So let's bounce on here to library resources. Viewfind is a discovery layer. It's open source. You can build on top of your regular system to bring together different searches. So you can, if you have a specialized database that is not like I used Viewfind to develop a system to search for ebooks in Orange County. Colorado uses it to search different their ebooks and their regular books, and they made it a really pretty discovery layer. Eric's adding FaxPro. I'm going to add that to the list here. It is all open source, so the support is kind of wonky, but it does seem like it's having a sort of a re-energized development phase. You can use an open source ILS. There's Evergreen and Koha. Those are both open source. They're free of charge. There are some options to get some paid support and stuff like that. Judy's saying we have Koha. Ellen's saying I have a PDF to Word free source. Sylvia's saying smallpdf.com will do that for you. And then Sylvia's saying you can also compress your files in there. So lots of options. If you are looking at creating online courses for your students or your patrons, these can be one-time things, on-demand sort of videos with content, interactive with quizzes. Moodle is a great place to do that. It's sort of like Canva or Microsoft, not Teams, but the full learning thing that I can't think of the name of. It can do all of that kind of stuff, and it's a free and open source version of it. So you have a lot of control over it. You can create the whole look and feel. It can be branded for your university or your library. You can set it up so that users can create classes if they wanted, or you can have it where users are taking classes through it. So makerspaces are just right for open source software. So we're going to kind of jump into that. So the first one is if you want to create your own virtual reality. Virtual reality is really on the cusp of being mainstream. Yep, Elena, at the end, I'm going to get Elena, I'm going to give you a link to the slides that have everything, including the stuff in the chat box in the document. Love and Unity are probably the two big players here. Love is like a little bit easier to use. Unity can help you create some really amazing content. Unity, however, remember we talked about that open source, personal use, commercial use. It is not free for commercial use. So if you're developing a game and then you release it and you're going to charge for it, you cannot, you have to pay for the software. But if you were teaching a class on how to use the software, it would be free of charge for everybody. And so you can have it in your makerspace that way. 3D design, there are, I actually have a link here because there's so many different options, so I put a link to more options here. But SketchUp and Tinkercad are probably the biggest for 3D design open source. You can design, you can get templates, you can bring stuff in, and you can work from there. Or you can just create from scratch, and then you can send it to any 3D printer. It's not proprietary, which is what we're seeing a lot of, is more like proprietary software with 3D design. Blender is probably one of the big boys in open source. It is for 3D graphics software. It's not like a picture editing. You can make animation in here. You can make just incredible. You can actually do 3D design and virtual reality in here. I will say this about Blender. It is not a software you open up and install and you are an expert in 5 minutes. It is extremely, to me, it was extremely overwhelming to open, and I'm a fairly comfortable techie. So there are tons of books, there are tons of YouTube videos, there are tons of communities. There's so much you can do with this. But you can create games. It's all completely open source, so it's definitely something I would put on my computers in our makerspace. You will probably, if you're not an expert or feel comfortable with it, there's probably someone in your community that would be able, or a student, another faculty member, or just a community member, maybe even a teenager, that could help actually teach classes on this for you. It's a really great thing to be able to offer free of charge to all of our users and ourselves. OBS Studio is, if you are, how many of you are doing like Facebook Lives and YouTube Lives right now? Alana says once. I feel like that was enough. If you are looking into doing, okay, Deborah says they are into that. OBS Studio is a great way to do this. It takes a little bit of time to set up. It's open source, so free of charge, but you can set up the streaming from this software and it will stream to multiple points at the same time. So you can have it streaming on your website, you can have it streaming in Facebook, you can have it streaming at YouTube, all simultaneously, whereas otherwise you're sort of platform dependent. And then you end up with the recording yourself and you can do whatever you want with it. Whereas if you did a Facebook Live, it's in Facebook. If you did it in YouTube, it's in YouTube. So this gives you a little more freedom with that and a lot more control over everything about the video. So graphics, I'm going to kind of skip a little bit and go having you guys type in, and after graphics we'll pause and kind of go through some additional resources. But if you are thinking of something, put it into that chat box immediately. GIMP is probably almost up there with Blender in the open source world. GIMP is an alternative to Photoshop. Personally, I think it's better than Photoshop in many ways. There's a couple things Photoshop does better, but I think overall GIMP does it just as good or better in many places. It will help you resize images. It will help you crop images. It will help you add layers to your images so you can make those complex things. If I took this picture and started editing it, I can quickly, using this over here, take out the car and just have that bird, and then I can put the bird wherever I wanted. You can do all of that kind of stuff. You can add text to the images. Okay, Alana's saying she uses photo layers on her Android phone, and that's similar. Yep, it is probably similar. This is probably every tool that you can imagine in one, but a lot of these apps will do some of the stuff that's on here. If you are not going to have the Adobe Suite available for your users, this is a really great open source alternative, and it is something people especially if they've ever used Photoshop, can jump in and start using immediately, but there's a lot of support online for it. So photo layers and Pinta and Sumo Paint. I'm going to put those into our document for sharing afterwards. So Sumo Paint is similar to Photoshop and GIMP. Okay, I haven't actually played with Sumo Paint. I'll have to take a look at it. Inkscape is more about vectors. So this is if you want to make icons, you want to make graphics, not a photo so much as you know, and SVGs and stuff like that. So this is, you know, you want to create things like this. You want to create a graphic design. This is it's an open source version. It's a little antiquated, but it's like Illustrator. Thank you. I feel like it's not been developed as much as it should be, but it is, I think Illustrator is just a little more slicker, but it is a good open source alternative to it. Beyond that, if you want to do some vectors and you want to get into some animation, Vector and Krita are great sources for this. Krita, Krita is actually an animation software, so you can do anime and things like that on it. And Vector is more creating graphics on the fly. So I'm just going to pause. Is there before we jump into editing software and some sort of web development stuff and marketing stuff, is there anything else that you guys wanted to add so far? So a couple more for photo editing. Pixlr and Polar are also really good. These are not as robust. They don't do everything that GIMP does, but they for quick compression, quick editing, quick kind of fun changes. These are really easy to use. I use Pixlr to help people if they need to resize photos really quickly for the web, that kind of stuff like that. Audacity is going to help you clean up your audio. So if you have a podcasting station, you probably already have this. Down here I have these will help you pull audio out of video. So for example, this webinar, if I just wanted my voice so I could take out all my uhs that I seem to have today, I could download my audio with one of these softwares, put it in Audacity, and I can actually delete all of the uhs out of what I'm saying, and it will sound a lot better. I won't have these awkward pauses that I seem to have today. So you can come in here and you can clean it up. You can see, so if a dog barked, you would see a huge spike, and I could come in and I could take those spikes out, and I can clean up that kind of stuff. You can take out background noises and things like that. OpenShot will help you edit your videos. You can trim them, which means you cut off the edges, but you can also slice them and put some and take out dead stuff in the middle. You can merge a couple videos together. I find it really robust. I'm actually trying to find a really good video editor for my phone, and so far, right now, I think it's going to be desktop, and OpenShot is probably one of the best solutions out there. And again, it's open source software, so it's free of charge. And it's easy to use. You can just jump in and start editing and have a video fairly quickly. Creating graphics, you can't not talk about Canva. Canva is, yeah, it really is, Whitney. It's like, I think I've downloaded like 20 apps the other night because I was looking for something and that would do what I wanted. Yeah, and I don't want to pay a lot of money. I can get up and go to my desktop and open up OpenShop. It's better for me anyway. So Canva and Snappa are sort of similar. Canva is the big guy. Probably a lot of you are already using it. Canva will help you create graphics. You just click and you paste, and they start with a template, and you just add and edit and download it into for social media or your website. Yeah, Sylvia's saying they use it almost exclusively for their flyers. If you have not, Canva for Nonprofits, you submit through your library or friends group, you are able to get Canva Pro for free as a library. A lot of libraries have done that. It just kind of takes a little patience of sending documents and stuff to them. I have almost fully replaced yeah, right, free stuff, exactly. I have almost fully replaced using Photoshop for stuff in Canva these days. It's so robust and they keep adding to it. I was creating little animated GIFs the other day in it, in the pro version. Just tons of stuff out there, and you can create a brand kit. So you know the colors of your logos and stuff like that are in there so that it will kind of help you keep within your brand as you start to develop stuff. And you can share and edit between people, which is also great. Infographics, Easily, Piktochart, and Venngage, they all have their freemium software. So all of them have a certain amount of templates that are free, and then after that you're paying for them. So I put all three because I will say I go through all three of them looking for the template that's going to fit whatever that specific need is at the moment. They're not all, I would not say one is better than the other, but I would say you're going to have to kind of toggle between the three of them to create infographics. Some open source photos. Finding photos is really difficult, good quality open source. Always make sure you document where you got the photo from though, so it doesn't come back that you took the image from something else. You got it from one of these sites. Nappy.co is African American images. Disabilityimages.com kind of takes us out of our normal realm of stock photos. And then you have Pexels and Unsplash, which are user generated. People upload free photos, really great quality. In them you have to cite your source, of course, but they're really high quality photos for free. And then Pixabay is sort of the old reliable. I would say personally I use Unsplash, or right now I'm mainly in Unsplash, but those first couple are really good as well. And Emoto, this will allow you to create videos. You can add photos and kind of put them together into a video, add some music to it. The free version is very robust. The only thing is there's a little Animoto logo on the bottom. If you don't care about that, I don't particularly care about that. You can use it for free. What I like is you can come in afterwards and change little things. So I can create a video called like things at my library this week. And then I can come in afterwards and just switch out stuff for next week. I don't have to create the whole thing from scratch every week. 360 tour 360 video is really the way of the future. You're seeing it more on Facebook, you're seeing it more on YouTube. You can use it in virtual reality. People like 360 tours, especially I think now when people have a lot of anxiety about going back into public. You know, what's changed in the library? How is this going to work? I'm not sure I'm comfortable yet. A 360 tour is a really great way to say, here's how it's going to work now. You're going to walk in, here's where the lady is going to take your temperature, or here's where the hand sanitizer is. You'll notice that this is different, but this is the same. And most importantly, the same friendly staff is there. So it can really help lower some anxiety levels of some of your users. So Google, of course, there's a lot of paid software for VR stuff, virtual tour stuff, but VR, google.com Tour Creator is so easy to use. You can stitch together photos. You can use 360 on a video off your camera. Lots of different things like that. And you can put together a fairly comprehensive virtual tour of your building that way. And then you can share it for free. If you are looking at building a website, WordPress and Drupal are both open source softwares. They're free out there. They offer a lot of flexibility. You can have, most of the web is built on these interfaces at this point. Sorry, I'm starting to cough. WordPress also has a WordPress.com site, which is a paid version of the software, but open source but both of these are developed by everyone. So you can get involved in the community. You can help drive how this software looks in the future. I mentioned fonts. Here are 4 font sources that are open source, which means they're free. I know some of you at libraries can't download new fonts to your computers, but if you can, these are great options. One thing to remember though when you download fonts is those fonts, if you do them in a Word document, do not go with the Word document. If I open your Word document from my computer might not have that font and it's going to look all wonky. So kind of keep that in mind when you start downloading fonts. If you want the font to go, you need to save it as a PDF or an image. Probably a PDF, a readable PDF is the best option there. So I went through a lot of resources, a huge amount of resources in 55 minutes. So what did I miss or what did you want to comment on that we didn't cover yet? I see a lot of typing, so I'm just going to pause for a second while everyone types. Oh, Peter is saying Adobe Spark, and I love Adobe Spark. I actually removed it. I'm going to be honest, because I couldn't figure out if it's still free or not. Because I have an Adobe account, because I have the Adobe Suite. I could not get Adobe to let me try it for free. Adobe Spark creates like Animoto, but it doesn't have the logo on it. It's available on Android. It's available on, I believe it's on iPhone as well, and it's on desktop. You can create I use it for short videos, but you can also create pages and digital ads. Sylvia's adding you can get extra storage on Box and Dropbox if you invite other people to join. I managed to get 2 extra gigs from Dropbox and Box that way, and that is a great way to do that. Whitney's saying not software, but people can print from WhatsApp. You can just scan a QR code on the desktop with your phone and it will print. That's wonderful. And then LibreOffice Suite. Yes, sorry, Robbie. I don't know how I missed that one. LibreOffice is an alternative to Office, and they have an alternative. I think it's called Write. They have a spreadsheet software, a slide presentation software. They have almost the full Apple Microsoft suite available as alternatives within LibreOffice. Now, I just want to mention there's OpenOffice and LibreOffice. You want to make sure you download LibreOffice. They used to be one thing, and they had one of those branches I mentioned, and LibreOffice has stayed really good. OpenOffice has gotten quite junky. So make sure if you're looking at that alternative, you use LibreOffice Suite. Thunderbird, if you need email. So lots of amazing resources. So we're coming up at the top of the hour. I did want to mention there is a slide in here with a couple sort of niche softwares that I really liked. Celestial Space is a VR space experience that is just amazing. Again, it's kind of niche, but I thought it was really a fun. MuseScore.org, if you have someone who's writing music, it is an open source version. It gives them the sheet music, the blank sheet music, so they can put the notes on there. NewsGuard is not 100% free. It's students, I think, can get it for free. But NewsGuard will actually rate the true and false news on your Google search for you, which I absolutely love. And then OpenSSL will help you certify your website as secure. So I'm going to make sure I save the chat box before we leave so I can make sure I'm going to go back over it with a fine tooth comb to make sure I didn't miss any great things. But I'm seeing LibreOffice, Thunderbird, Incompetech, and YouTube Audio Library as additional resources that we're going to want to look at on our own afterwards. And I did not, how did I not put the link here? Hold on one second. I'm going to get the link for you really quickly. I apologize. I am actually going to another free source out there called Bitly. If you have not used it, bit.ly. And what that does is take the giant URL that you get from Dropbox and creates a nice short URL. You can customize it, but I'm not going to have you guys wait while I do that kind of stuff. That's the URL. And then Ellen's adding, and hi Ellen, by the way, screenshare.com. So that's, the link is in the chat box if you guys don't see it. It's a bit.ly URL. And that all of this stuff is there. And I'm going to, as soon as we hang up, I'm going to finish adding in all of these great resources you guys were adding today. We're coming up right at 11. I know some of you have places to go. It's blocked from your system. Whitney, give me, if you email me this link, I will email you the presentation itself. Oh, okay, so hold on. If that is the case, I can send you the whole Dropbox link. That's actually the Dropbox link, so you can get to it directly. Yep, Sarah, if you email me at that address, I will email the slides to you directly. And that goes for anybody else. I will also give them to Swiftland as well, so they'll have those if you need them. But I love that you guys are in there talking about workarounds for, but I'm not going to say that into the chat. But if I hope you guys all benefited. I will stay on the line if you guys have any questions, and I'm going to download the chat before we hang up so I can get everything. I hope you guys found this session beneficial and that you learned about a couple new resources.
Thank you, Diana, for the webinar. If you enjoyed this webinar, I ask that you join us for Diana Silvera's next webinar, alt tags, how and why to use them. As always, we encourage you to keep an eye on the Swiftland CE calendar, the Swiftland Facebook page, or your message from the listserv. Thank you everyone for attending, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you, Debbie.